The wind came before the cold. It always did on Macquarie Island. It arrived low and sideways, scraping across the tussock grass like a blade being sharpened, and by the time it reached the research station at the southern end of the island, it had gathered enough force to rattle the double-paned windows in their frames. Eleanor Marsh had lived through 43 of these winters. She no longer flinched at the sound. She was 71 years old, small in the way that women who have carried hard lives become small, not fragile, but compressed, like wood that has been pressed until it becomes something denser than itself. Her white hair was cut short and practical. Her hands, wrapped around a mug of black tea, were covered in the fine topographic map of a life spent outdoors, creased at every knuckle, darkened at the fingertips, steady despite everything. Outside, the temperature had dropped to -38°C by mid-morning. The official reading from the automated weather station posted it at -41 by noon. But Eleanor had lived long enough on this island to know that official readings were optimistic. The wind chill turned numbers into something closer to a punishment. She had heard the meteorologists at the main station, younger people with calibrated instruments and satellite uplinks, say the effective temperature that afternoon was somewhere near -71. She had simply nodded and put another log on the fire. Eleanor had come to Macquarie Island 30 years ago as a wildlife biologist with the Australian Antarctic Division. She had studied the royal penguins, the elephant seals, the sooty albatross. She had published papers that few people read and that mattered enormously to the ones who did. When her contract ended, she had renewed it. And when the division restructured and her position was eliminated, she had stayed anyway, in the small stone cottage at the edge of the protected zone that had once belonged to a former station superintendent. She maintained a weather log. She filed monthly reports for a university in Hobart that paid her a modest stipend. She answered emails slowly and kept to herself. She did not consider herself lonely. She considered herself located. The penguins were the reason she stayed, though she would never have said it aloud in those terms. The Royal Penguin Colony on the northern beach was one of the largest in the world, nearly 1 million birds at peak season, a sound and a smell and a movement that she found, even after 3 decades, genuinely astonishing. She knew individual birds by posture and behavior in the way that other people knew neighbors. She had documented births and deaths, pair bonds that lasted years, the way a bird could stand perfectly still in a blizzard and seem, improbably, content. She was watching the thermometer inch downward when she heard the knock. It was not a sound she expected. The nearest occupied research station was 4 kilometers north, and the team there, 3 glaciologists on a 6-month rotation, had radioed that morning to say they were locked down and running system checks. No one came to Eleanor's door without calling first. There was a protocol. There was always a protocol on Macquarie Island, because the island itself did not care about intentions. She set down her mug. The knock came again. Not frantic. Not aggressive. Measured, somehow, in the way that something very large and very cold and very desperate can still manage to be measured when it has no other option. Eleanor pulled on her thermal layer, her outer shell, her gloves. She moved to the door with the careful economy of someone who had learned that wasted movement in cold weather was a small form of self-destruction. She unlatched the lower bolt, then the upper one, then braced her shoulder against the door before she turned the handle, because the wind liked to use that exact moment to make its opinion known. She opened the door. The penguin was standing on her step. He was a male royal penguin, she could tell immediately, larger than the females, the yellow-orange crest above his eyes flattened against his skull from the wind, his beak slightly open. He was not moving in the agitated way of a frightened or injured bird. He was standing with a kind of terrible stillness, his small black eyes fixed on her face. Behind him, the dark was already coming in off the Southern Ocean, even though it was barely 3 in the afternoon. Eleanor looked at the penguin. The penguin looked at Eleanor. She had spent 30 years studying these animals. She understood their behavior with a precision that most people reserved for other humans. And in 30 years, not one of them had ever come to her door. She stepped aside. Without hesitation, the penguin walked in. He moved straight to the fire as if he had done it before, stopping just close enough to feel the heat without burning. Eleanor closed the door and watched him, her biologist's mind already running through possibilities: disorientation, separation from the colony, storm displacement. But something was wrong with the way he was standing. She had seen thousands of penguins in distress. This was different. He kept turning his head back toward the door, then back to her. Deliberately. Repeatedly. She knew that behavior. He was not lost. He was asking. Eleanor pulled her thermal gear back on without a word, grabbed her torch and her emergency kit, and looked at him. "Where?" she asked quietly, as if he could understand her. And somehow, the absurdity of the question didn't reach her, because he was already walking back toward the door, pausing, looking over his shoulder at her with those small dark eyes that held something that had no clean scientific name. She opened the door again. The cold hit her face like a wall of glass. He walked into the dark and she followed. The torch beam cut through the dark in a narrow white cone, barely reaching 10 meters ahead before the wind swallowed it. Eleanor followed the penguin across the frozen tussock grass, her boots breaking through a thin crust of ice with every step. He moved faster than she expected, his body low and efficient against the wind, pausing every 20 meters to confirm she was still behind him. They walked for nearly 15 minutes before she heard it. A sound so small the storm almost erased it completely. A thin, reedy cry, not distress exactly, but something closer to exhaustion. The sound of something that has been trying for a very long time and is nearly finished trying. She swung the torch left and found them. A nest hollow scraped between two flat rocks. And inside it, a chick, no more than 3 weeks old, its gray down soaked through, its beak opening and closing around a cry that had almost no voice left in it. Beside it, the unmistakable stillness of the mother. Gone for hours, Eleanor could tell. Maybe longer. The father had come to the only door he knew. If this story is already pulling at something in your chest, this is a good moment to subscribe to the channel. The hardest part is still ahead, and so is something quietly miraculous. Eleanor did not hesitate. She unzipped her outer shell and pressed the chick against her chest, feeling the shocking cold of its body through her thermal layer. It was dangerously light. She rebut-toned everything around it, leaving only a small opening near her collar for air, and turned back toward the cottage. The father walked beside her the entire way. Not behind her. Beside her. Inside, she worked quickly and quietly. Warm water in a shallow bowl to raise the ambient temperature near the chick without shocking its system. Diluted electrolyte solution administered with a dropper, one small drop at a time. She had no penguin formula, but she had fish, frozen, which she thawed and pressed into the tiniest pieces her fingers could manage. The chick did not respond for the first 20 minutes. The father stood at the edge of the table and watched her with an attention so focused it felt like pressure. Then the chick moved. A small repositioning, a tightening of its body against the warmth. Then the beak opened and accepted the next piece of fish. Eleanor exhaled for what felt like the first time since she had opened her door. The father made a single low sound. The chick slept through the night pressed against Eleanor's side, wrapped in a wool cloth she had warmed near the fire. The father slept on the floor beside her chair. She did not sleep at all, but it was not the anxious wakefulness of worry. It was something older and quieter, the kind of vigil that asks nothing in return. By morning the storm had pulled back enough to let a pale gray light come through the windows. Eleanor checked the chick's temperature, its breathing, the strength of its grip when she offered her finger. All of it moving in the right direction. She radioed the northern station and explained the situation with the flat clinical language she used when she needed people to take her seriously and not ask too many questions.
No casualties, awaiting orders.
A wildlife veterinarian from Hobart would arrive within 48 hours by supply flight. When she set the radio down, she found the father
Base to
standing at the
incoming
door
flight.
again.
Confirm arrival time.
But this
Flight
time
is
he
5
was not
minutes out.
asking to
Supply
go out.
secured.
Copy. We'll be
He
ready.
was simply standing there, facing her, completely still. Eleanor had spent 30 years learning not to project human meaning onto animal behavior. She projected it anyway. "Thank you," she said. The chick survived. The veterinarian from Hobart, a young woman named Dr. Peta Havilite, spent 2 days at Eleanor's cottage monitoring its recovery before declaring it stable enough to be reintroduced to the colony under observation. Eleanor carried it to the northern beach herself, the father walking the entire distance beside her boots without being asked. She watched them disappear into the crowd of a million birds and felt something she could not name and did not try to. That was 14 months ago. Eleanor still files her monthly weather reports. She still answers emails slowly. The university in Hobart renewed her stipend for another 2 years, and Dr. Havilai has written twice asking if she would co-author a paper on anomalous help-seeking behavior in royal penguins. Eleanor has not said yes yet. She is thinking about it. Some mornings, walking the perimeter of the colony, she sees a juvenile bird that moves with a particular confidence along the rocks near the southern edge. She has no way of knowing if it is him. She tells herself that is not the point. She watches anyway. You.